we should always be trying to move into a more digital motion with our accounts. I should always have the goal of moving them from a high touch to a low touch to eventually a tech touch customer that takes less of our time, less of our overhead.
Once again, welcome to the Digital Customer Experience podcast with me, Alex Turkovich. So glad you could join us here today and every week as we explore how digital can help enhance the customer and employee experience. My goal is to share what my guests and I have learned over the years so that you can get the insights that you need to evolve your own digital programs. If you'd like more info, need to get in touch, or sign up for the weekly companion newsletter that has additional articles and resources in it, go to digitalcustomersuccess.com. For now, let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to the Digital Customer Experience podcast. My name is Alex Turkovich. So glad you're here. And we've got a great one lined up for you today with Aaron Thompson of Success Coaching. Most of you are probably familiar with Success Coaching because of all the cool and great certification programs that they provide to the CS industry. They also do the Thought Leader and Top Influencer Awards and all that kind of fun stuff. Great presence in the CS community for sure. And Aaron is Chief Revenue Officer at Success Coaching and just does a lot of great things for the industry. He also is famous for his red slacks. So we'll talk about that a little bit in this interview, along with digital stuff and what makes QBR super annoying and all of that fun little diatribe stuff that we usually get into in these conversations. So I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Aaron Thompson, because I sure did. Cool. Let's go, Aaron Thompson. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast. We had probably 10 false starts on this whole thing over the last few months because, I got sick and then you got sick and then I got busy and you got busy. And this is like, but I think we finally made it. So welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I thought this day would never happen. So it's a dream come true to be on the podcast, Alex. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I've been looking forward to this convo because you're quite prolific in the world of CS. I guess my question is, are you wearing red slacks right now?
I should have.
You
I should have, and then I could have totally nailed it. Where was that in the pre-podcast?
I want to keep you on your toes. Yeah.
I want the curveballs. No, I've got some fancy basketball shorts on because it's like the first time it's been nice here in Portland, Oregon, in about 9 months. So
yeah, I'm wearing a nice button down, but I totally have shorts on. So
100%. Yeah, that's the modern day uniform, right?
The work
Business
attire.
Up top and party on the bottom.
Yeah, and this is the first time I've ever asked a guest if they've had pants on. So,
Well, I appreciate that. I was like, thanks.
Well, I mean, for those who are like, what the hell is he talking about? The context is obviously you're, I think, Chief Revenue Officer at Success Coaching, correct?
That is correct. Yep.
And then you operate under red slacks in terms of your, I guess, thought leadership and conference speaking and podcast appearances and all that kind of stuff. How'd the red slacks thing come about?
It's funny. It goes all the way back to the CS 100 back in 2018, I think it was. I had a 15-minute pitch, and I thought it was part of this competition of this Innovator of the Year award. And so I'm up there with actually a partner at the time, and I just had these red pants, and I was like, I'm going to kind of peacock a little bit here for this 15-minute pitch. Boy, but I thought, like I said, I thought we were in the competition, and we nail this presentation, and I come off stage, and I find out very quickly, I'm told that, that's actually not, this is just sort of an opportunity for you to advertise. There's no competition at all. But that was the end of it. Because I wore the red pants, everybody started kind of, seeing me with that. And that kind of became the personal branding. And then 2022, I'm like, I need to create a new website. I got to put someplace. And really what it is, it's a public speaking business. That's really what that's all about.
Yeah.
And to your point, a lot of podcasts and that kind of stuff. Just, I need a place to put all the things I do publicly.
Yeah.
So I start building it out, and I'm looking for URLs, and I'm on the couch. I yelled at my wife, "Hey, honey, redpants.com is taken. You got any other ideas?" And she said, "Try slacks," and the rest is history. So even though they're not red slacks, they're actually red pants. They're like chinos.
Yeah.
But I've got about 10 pairs of those bad boys, and that's sort of kind of become my
it's the
personal
uniform.
brand.
I love it. I mean, it's great.
Tea, and I'm good to go.
Well, the beauty of that too is like you're not branded into customer success, you know? So like you can go talk about anything as long as you're wearing those red slacks.
Yeah, it's actually worked out pretty well this year as I've gotten introduced to be a speaker and a moderator at customer experience conferences. I'm actually
Hmm.
headed in 2 weeks over to Toronto to be the MC of a fairly large conference up there. And I was in Vancouver, BC, just back in March as a panelist or fireside chat. And
Yeah.
same thing, I wore the red slacks, and everybody said, they like the red pant guy. So I can't get them to figure out that it's slacks, dang it. It's not pants, but it does definitely transcend outside the CS world.
It's so funny you say that because, we with the 50th episode, we kind of rebranded a little bit to the customer experience podcast as well. And there's a lot of people that are just kind of going CX in general because like especially in digital, it, the digital experience encompasses just way more than CS. It is like what is your end-to-end customer experience? And if you're not going to connect it digitally, you might as well, what are we talking about?
Yeah, what business doesn't need a digital presence nowadays? I'm actually going to have a guest up in Toronto that his talk is about phygital, and I've never
Mm,
heard this term before. But the match between physical and digital, and
mhm.
he runs the phygital program for a fast food chain that started in the Middle East and then moved into Asia and is now making its way into Canada called OPTP, and it's all about managing that order on the app, order
Yeah.
online, walk into the physical location, easy pickup, and really that holistic customer experience. You're totally right. There's not many businesses today that don't have to find a blend between those two.
Yeah, it's so true. Phygital. I don't know. I
Digital.
don't. That's going to take a while to sink in.
Yeah.
I
He
think a
was very
fidget
proud of it
spinner.
though.
Yeah, I think like I have fidget toys because I need something to play with all the time.
Yeah, I wish I
Uh,
had come up with those things and the pet rock back when those were both
yeah,
invented.
no joke.
I missed my calling as an
You
inventor.
missed your calling. So, I don't want to go too deep into kind of background. There's obviously some interesting things. I think when we talked a couple times, you were mentioning that kind of like your first CS gig was like B2B to C. And so there was some like interesting stuff that I think there's so much that we can kind of glean from B2C that B2B kind of has failed to do in history or whatever. So I was just curious if you could give us like a brief rundown of like how you came to be where you are and what led you into CS and all that kind of good stuff.
100%. Yeah. I, like most people, did not go to school for customer success management. I didn't find a major in college that, aligned with that. And really, personally, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I kind of stumbled into technology by way of the healthcare space.
Hmm.
And then that led me into support. And I had been working in support for a couple of decades, running a technical account management team at a B2B SaaS company here in Portland. And it was actually just last week was my anniversary on May 10th, 2016, I believe it was.
Wow.
I got laid off for the first time.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a job. I didn't know what I was going to do next. And it was like this mind blowing, like I'd had a job since college. I mean, I
Hmm.
was, and so I thought, what should I was getting burned out on the support world, the reactive firefighting. I wanted a little more control of my schedule and my day to day. But I loved helping customers. I loved solving problems.
Just
I
not at
loved
like
delivering.
2 o'clock in the morning, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so I was looking at sales, and I thought that'd be something, but I was 36 years old with like, I think my son was about 4 or 5 years old at the time. Like, I don't really want to kind of start over again in my career. And I found this struggling startup here in Portland that was hiring a head of customer success to fix the churn problem.
Yep.
And with my support experience, they hired me in to do that. I was able to get that job. And then I came in on day one and I pulled out my laptop and I went to Google and I typed in, what is customer success? And now that I'm the head of this thing, I should probably figure out like what is, like, I thought I knew what it was, but of course I did not. And so I found the industry, the communities, the technology players, the conferences, and I studied it like I had never studied anything. And it was amazing to me because all of these jobs that I'd had through my whole career, a call center rep, even help with like checking people in at a health club, Like everything was customer facing in
Yeah.
different ways.
Right.
They all applied in one way or another to customer success management. And so I implemented this strategy over a 12-month period and took a 40% churn rate down to 8%. And I realized, wow, this actually works in this repeatable revenue model. And that's when I went and founded my first company. And it was a local kind of consultancy for customer success. And somewhere along the lines, I met Todd and Andrew, the two co founders of Success Coaching. The rest is history with that. But I
Yeah.
stumbled into customer success just like everybody else typically does, whether you're coming from sales or support or product or whatever. Usually, none of us are like thinking as a little kid, I want to be a CSM when I grow up.
I love that story. And one thing you said specifically kind of lit my neurons off, which was that whole kind of service industry early experience with customers. Two things to that. I'm a firm believer that anyone should at some point have a job in hospitality, whether it be like restaurants or hotels, because that's where you learn how to do some of this stuff and how to be customer facing. And also, I mean, you see the horrid side of some of that stuff, but I think it's an amazing training ground for how to really work with customers in a productive way that solves problems and gets you through to the other side and makes folks happy. I spent some time at a software company that was primarily for the hospitality, restaurant, hotel industry, and we hired for those teams right out of the restaurant industry, and I hardly ever had to do any kind of customer service training or anything like that because those folks knew, they knew what they knew the assignment, so to speak.
Yeah.
It was pretty
Yeah, and
cool.
then been your customer as well. And we advise that as well. If I'm gonna go build a customer success team or a customer experience team, I want to find people who have been in my customer's industry and
Yeah,
domain over someone who's been in customer success and customer experience for
right.
100 years, a
It's
different domain.
that empathy gene for the folks that they're talking to.
Exactly. Value is so much easier to deliver and demonstrate if if you've been there before. And then, yeah, just being empathetic when things go wrong and anticipation of risk and risk identification and all of that is just so much easier when you've been on the other side of the table.
Yeah, for sure. So, this is the Digital Customer Experience Podcast. I have to pause every time now, since the rename, because digital customer success just rolls off the tongue.
I didn't even notice it. No, it's DCE now, not
It's
DCS.
DCXD.
Yeah, yeah, your branding's about as good as mine, Red Pants. I love it. We're two marketers at heart. You
That-
can
that-
tell, Alex.
That's right. But one thing that I ask all of my guests, as you probably well know, is for their own definition elevator pitch of digital CS that we like to put on the website so everybody can see each other's answers afterwards. But would love your kind of take on digital CX.
Yeah, I wasn't surprised to see the biggest word in the word cloud was customer.
Yeah, I think right.
That probably makes sense. But yeah, so what I came up with for DCS is we're leveraging digital technologies and data to build strong, long-lasting relationships with our customers.
Yeah.
And so it's really that's as quick and succinct as I can make it, right? And I think the piece that most people might not think about, you know better than me, you've done I don't know how many of these interviews now, is the data side. I think everybody thinks about the tech stack
Yeah.
and like the digital side, but really having access to and then knowing what kind of insights, actionable insights you can glean from that data
Mhm.
is really, I think, a huge part of it that I don't know. Have you experienced that people are really leaning into that side of the digital world or is it sort of forgotten sometimes?
It's a really good question, and I would say yes, no, because I've had the great fortune throughout this process of advising a fair amount of companies on their digital strategy, and a big thing that always comes up is like, how am I going to structure my team around this stuff? Because a lot of people immediately think, okay, I need to probably need like a scaled customer facing team, and then I need my Gainside admin or whatever. And I'm like, well, you should probably think about somebody who lives in data and integrations and pivot tables and really knows your data inside and out. Because ultimately, I think, to your point, data is one of the foundational blocks of a good digital strategy, because you can't do stuff if your data isn't clean. And I'm not saying it has to be like spick and span, but it needs to align with what your objectives are. And so having somebody on the team, or somebody tangentially in RevOps or CS ops or wherever ops, that can, help you to look at that data, do some data hygiene, and get those, glean those insights that are needed out, is like worth its weight in gold, and can make the difference between like a healthy digital program and CS org, or like something that's just kind of cobbled together.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I feel like that should be what is informing the direction of the digital side and the tech stack and
Yeah.
everything that impacts the customer experience from soup to nuts. The more we can preface it based on data
Yeah.
and truly understanding whether it's an adoption issue or whatever the challenges are that we're looking to solve with digital scalability, what have you. Really understanding that starts, I believe, with fully understanding what is the usage pattern and what does the engagement look like, and where are customers being successful, and then when do they stop logging in because they're not seeing value, and what can we do to try to fill in those
Yeah.
chasms, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, you'll be staggered at how many orgs don't really even know who their champions are, or who their
Yeah,
technical contacts are,
really.
and just struggle on a foundational level with who they're supposed to be engaging with, especially on the, with assigned accounts that have CSMs in place. I mean, that kind of takes care of itself, because you're engaging with the account and you know them. But from a in an unassigned world, in a digital world, there's some cool things out there that people are doing, like, uh, Gainsight, for example. They allow a user to kind of self-select who they are and things like that. So you have to get kind of
Yeah,
scrappy sometimes to figure that out, and not let that data get stale too, because people move on and get different
yeah,
jobs and stuff. So
yeah. Keeping that up to date and accurate is tricky, and a lot of that I feel like should have been discovered during the sales cycle.
yeah,
Yeah. Right. Like as you're going, even on a digital sale,
yeah,
like, yeah, you've
yeah,
got your buyer, but like, what are the roles that your product needs
yeah,
to know so that you can execute effective digital, and making that prospect or net new customer or whoever, early in the life cycle, let that information so you can have the appropriate parties
yeah. I mean, the reality is your buyer is disappearing after the deal's closed, right? And then
in
your
place.
champion during the deal may be different than your champion post sale. And like, while they're hot, identify all those people as like, as part of the deal close. Like, let's go. Who do we need to
Yeah.
talk to?
And that's just all on the business side. You got the technical side too, right?
Yeah.
If you have any integrations and anything like that that you've got to worry about, you got to have, who are the players?
Yeah. Yeah. It's key. Key. And to kind of, go back to the digital front, I think digital is very uniquely positioned to help solve for some of that stuff, just with some of those plays, and rather than relying on humans, and getting your BDRs involved in calling your customers to identify contacts or whatever. So, success coaching is obviously well known in the industry for, your certification programs and things like that. And I know that, you guys are also working on kind of some digital stuff as part of that. One of the things I wanted to ask you about a little bit is, sure, what are you working on? But then also, like, I think there's education in digital CS for the leader. There's education in digital CS for, the ops kind of person. But I strongly believe that there's also opportunity to educate CSMs on digital and those kinds of things. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, so thank you for the opportunity to plug our digital CS course that we
Of
are
course.
currently working on. And we can talk more about that later. That's also a unicorn. Anybody who's watching the video, our logo is supposed to be a unicorn. If anybody's seen a donkey and a plunger, you're not thinking majestically enough.
Right.
And it's our little cheeky play on unicorns out there. But so across those three roles, like from the leader position, the professional development and education around anything is, including digital, is at that strategic level, right?
Yeah.
It's at that more consultative level, and really understanding what is the goal and what's the vision of the organization relative to this motion. And so that would be what we would be educating on. The next level down, your CS ops folks, that's going to obviously be much more the nuts and bolts, much more tactical, like
Yeah.
within this tech stack, and having that goal or those set of goals in mind. Here's what we need you to build and do and create, et cetera. And then on the CSM side, I think it would be around, at least my strategy with them would be to teach them ways to leverage those ops people and the tech stack, of course.
Yeah.
But ideally, over time, we should always be trying to move into a more digital motion with our accounts.
Mm.
If we're customer success managers, I should always have the goal of moving them from a high touch to a low touch to eventually a tech touch customer that takes less of our time, less of our overhead. And if we can do that because we have the right tech stack in place and the right strategy and still maintain a high quality customer experience,
Mm-hmm.
that's just additional margin for our business, right?
Yeah.
And so I always find it funny when people look at their segmentation and their intelligent service model as though it's stagnant, right?
Mm.
We have these accounts as our tier one high touch. These other ones are tier two, low touch, mid touch, and then we've got everybody else. And that's just how it's going to be, because these ones pay us so much money that we can justify having a dedicated CSM.
Yeah.
Perfect. I totally agree. I'm not saying not have a dedicated CSM. I'm saying if we can use some of the tech stack, use some of the tools that are available out there to maintain a really high quality CX for those customers by defining, delivering, and demonstrating what success is for them and all of these moments of truth through their life cycle, et cetera. But we can start to alleviate some of those mundane tasks, right?
Mm.
Like if I have to do a live business review, that's part of my charter as a CSM. The less time I can spend preparing for those business reviews,
Right.
the more time I'm going to have to do the other strategic stuff that we really care about. And frankly, what the customer really cares about. That's what we're really getting at.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where digital should just always be pushing up into high touch. It shouldn't just be like, well, this is a high touch, so we do it this way. And that other one's a tech touch, so we do it that way. We should be learning from the low end of our segmentation strategy and constantly as leaders be strategizing on how we can move that up into those higher ranking accounts to free up the time for the CSMs to be able to do the more important, strategic, valuable tasks, less of the mundane.
Yeah, very well said. Hey, I want to have a brief chat with you about this show. Did you know that roughly 60% of listeners aren't actually subscribed to the show on whatever platform they're listening to it on? Now, as you know, algorithms love likes, follows, subscribes, comments, all of that kind of stuff. So if you get value out of the content, you listen regularly, and you want to help others to discover the content as well, please go ahead and follow the show, leave a comment, leave a review. Anything that you want to do there really helps us to grow organically as a show. And while you're at it, go sign up for the companion newsletter that goes out every week at digitalcustomersuccess.com. Now, back to the show. As somebody who is an active digital CS leader, I very much look at the CSM population as my customers. And I think that's one thing that we were talking earlier about, some of the things that gets overlooked when building a digital, strategy. It's like, yeah, you're a customer facing, you're building customer facing stuff, but guess what? Your CSMs need to benefit from that stuff as much as the customer does. And so when you talk about like building those efficiencies and really making the front end of those engagements as digital as possible to where the human can come in on the back end and just provide value. You don't have to send all these emails. You don't have to, spend hours on making this deck. The tricky part is it sounds amazing in theory.
I can't just pontificate and make it happen.
Wouldn't that be great? I mean, we might get to the future of AI where like you spend like a half hour telling a GPT or whatever what problems you have, and it pulls all the tools and integrations and templates together and does it for you. That would be great, wouldn't it?
I
Um,
just need I just need a GPT to be able to build mobile apps when I'm out thinking, I'm out with my wife, and I'm like, they should make an app for that.
yeah,
You know how many good ideas I've had for apps in my life? I
yeah,
mean, I would be a millionaire if I could actually execute.
yeah, absolutely. I'm right there with you, bro. But like in the meantime, it's like how, it can get so overwhelming on how to execute some of that stuff. And the app marketplace and the technology market for CS and really anything is so fragmented and there's stuff all over the place. It can be you can quickly just go into shutdown mode, trying to
Yeah.
figure it all out.
I think what you want to do as a first step is just like taking any product to market. You're going to find your product market fit and what is your
Mhm.
value proposition.
Yep.
And that's going to start with market research and really understanding your customer. And if you, as a DC digital CSX leader, see your CSMs as your customer, that's where we're going to start. Let's
Yeah.
figure out where you're spending the most time on mundane tasks. And then let's figure out what you need out of that in terms of outcomes, and then I'll go back and build whatever tool I can, come up with and
Yep.
buy or purchase, whatever. I'll
Yeah.
find a solution for that pain point, and then we'll take it to market with you, iterate on it, improve it until it's honed and dialed, and then we move on to the next one, just like
Yeah.
you would with an external customer in any kind of technology product.
Yeah. So true. So true. And being really just clear in your prioritization, like what are the biggest issues, and go solve for those and take it one step at a time. There's a lot of folks who just try to do too much all at once because it's exciting. I get
Yeah.
it. I get it.
Sometimes it can feel overwhelming if you can't sort of back
Totally.
into, right, and make it
Absolutely.
actionable, tactical things to work on.
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a long standing, several year long talk track in CS about, the state of the QBR. And you've contributed to that as well. I think a few years ago you gave a talk, or recently you gave a talk about, making QBR smarter. And we're starting to see a proliferation of digital QBRs. We were talking about our mutual friend Percy Rose not long ago, or right before we started recording, who's doing, he's using Cast App to run monthly business reviews for his middle tier customers, which I think is freaking awesome.
That's
And that
perfect.
stuff is starting to happen where, we're not, again, it's this whole thing of like, not removing the human from the process, but removing the mundane from the human so that they can then provide value on the back end. But anyway, I'm still in your thunder probably, but like what's your take on the combination or juxtaposition of like humans, digital, and the QBR?
Well, I hate QBRs.
Yeah.
I mean, how this whole thing started was, I think it was 2021 when I finally wrote an article, which can be found on redslacks.com,
Oh,
called QBRs Are Stupid.
mhm.
And all of a sudden people are like, oh, what? You can't say they're stupid. We've been doing them forever. And I'm just echoing what I, as a customer, feel like and what I am hearing from your customers. And the reason they're stupid is because, first off, they're quarterly. And that just assumes that, like, I'm going to be available throughout the year every 90 days at the same cadence and clip, which I know my life is not consistent. It's got cycles.
Yep.
There's times where I'm busier and there's times where I'm less busy. And in those busier times, no, I don't want to have my vendors tell me how great they are.
Yeah.
In the less busy times, maybe I'm more open to that. So that's what originally kind of where it's just dumb, right? You should do them differently throughout the year. And the other main point about business reviews is they're a necessary evil in customer success management. And I say that because they're the most selfish thing we do.
Hmm.
So much of what we do is about the customer and them achieving value and all of that. And then we get to the business review. And the reason we have to do them, that's why I say they're necessary, is because you got to demonstrate the value you've been delivering. If you don't demonstrate it to me somehow, some way, you can't guarantee that I know the value and I'm actually realizing the same value that you feel like you've been delivering. And so you have to do something to demonstrate value. However, it doesn't have to be a 60-minute Zoom call that starts with your founding story and goes through support tickets, initial response times, how many bugs you've fixed. spoiler alert, bugs were not part of the business goals and objectives that I wanted to achieve when I bought your thing.
Yep.
So just because you fix them quickly, it doesn't give me any value. It just gets you back to square one.
Yeah.
And so that in itself is mundane and just something I frankly
Self-serving.
don't. It is. I don't
Mhm.
care as your customer. I didn't want the bug in the first place. Don't be so proud about the fact that you fixed it quick, right? That didn't give me any value. And so there's all this, like, they're just poorly executed for years and years and years until finally I write this article and everybody's like, okay, smart guy. Well, then how do you make them smart, right? If you can't just say they're dumb and then, not have a solution. And that's what it comes down to, is remembering the number one goal of an effective business review is to demonstrate the value you've been delivering. And if you keep that as your goal, you can get way more creative than 75 PowerPoint slides
Yep.
in a 60-minute Zoom call with your executive stakeholder.
Yeah.
Perfect example that's in that article, the Spotify Wrapped campaigns at the end of the year. That is a digital customer success motion done at massive scale. Hundreds of millions of subscribers, I think they have.
Yeah.
Everybody gets that information. It's all about the customer. It shows me all the different listening habits and behaviors I did last year. And it is an annual business review to make sure that I don't cancel Spotify at the end of the year when I look at my credit card statement and say, man, we got a lot of streaming services. What can we consolidate? What can we get rid of? Spotify's front of mind. The other thing that's genius about that, and why I love that campaign so much from a digital perspective, is they also make it really easy for me to be an advocate for Spotify.
It's social proof.
Totally. I go put it out in social and I go brag about, like, for me, I'm a huge fan of the Killers.
Mm-hmm.
I was super stoked to see I was in the top 1% globally Spotify listeners in terms of the amount of music from the Killers I listened to in 2023. You better believe I put that on my Instagram. I was all puffing my chest. Now I've just advocated for Spotify. People who don't have Spotify might see that on my feed, think it looks cool, want to investigate. And now they've generated a customer success qualified lead through a 100% digital strategy in motion. I love it. I mean, I think B2B can learn so much from the direct to consumer world in terms of digital.
I feel like I've been to church. I need to dab my forehead.
I get on a soapbox. I'm a little passionate about the business review thing because it's just for years. I mean, I've been in them.
Yeah.
They've sucked. I've been the CSM and been told by my boss I have to do them. And my customer says, I don't want it. I don't need it. Why are you dragging me into this meeting every 90 days? I've been all across the pains of the QBR world. And once I got into customer success and I really learned about why do we actually do them, it was like, oh, well, in that case, we could come up with a million different ways to demonstrate the value that we've been delivering.
And, value looks different to each persona. Like, that's where the granularity comes in. And you really got to figure out what makes each persona tick, because your executive is going to need different information than your admin and your end user. They're going to want to get, the executive wants pointed information about, is the investment we're making worth it?
Yep.
Period.
Every party, your exec, your champion, your admins, your end users, they've all got different definitions of success, right? And CS is all about define what success is, deliver that, and then demonstrate to me that you've done so.
Yeah.
And each of them has a different definition because they all have different desired outcomes that they're looking to achieve. Mm-hmm. That executive, it's going to be an ROI kind of, show me the money. Yeah. The champion, it's probably save me some time, make my team's life easier. The end users are certainly save me some time.
That's right.
And, help me navigate the change management, show me what's in it for me. Why would I use your tool, et cetera? How are you making my life easier?
Yeah.
Same thing with the system admins. And so with digital, we can actually show those. Mm-hmm. We can't as easily. We could, but it'd be, what do we got? 4 QBRs now that we're going to do, right? For the executive and then the champion and then the end users, et cetera. With digital, we could have this running every 90 days, giving them what they need and having their own kind of wrapped campaigns.
I mean, back to the, exactly. Back to the Spotify thing. Like, I, as a podcast host, I get my own version of the campaign. from Spotify that says, "Hey, you're your listeners. Here's your blah. Here's your top geographies. Here's how you did compared to last year, and all this kind of stuff." And that's, it's beautiful because, hey, that's something I can share on LinkedIn and on Twitter and X, whatever, and again proliferate there. But it's a different set of information because obviously I actually need to talk to whoever. Like, I'm sure there's a whole slew of people involved in that whole thing.
Yeah,
But
I want to know whose idea that was.
oh,
That's
yeah, yeah.
it's just such a digital customer success, customer experience,
Hmm.
perfect sort of example of how you can do it right. I know
Yeah.
somebody was in a meeting who was like, "I got an idea." Everybody else was probably like, "Nah, that's stupid. Nobody would ever want to do that."
How the hell
And
are
then
you going to
finally
do
somehow it
that?
happened.
Speaking of cool stuff like that, are there other like digital motions that you've seen, out in the wild, or, with, some of your clients that you dig and you were like, "Yeah, that's really cool."
Yeah, as GPT becomes more and more prevalent,
Yeah.
and we're just getting so many more tools built around that technology specifically. This is happening more and more. It's just there's
Yeah.
just more options out there. And as far as like examples of that, like I mean, do I throw out actual products and
Whatever
companies?
you
I mean,
want.
you
Yeah.
had mentioned Cast App, right? That
Sure.
the Dicky over there, and that's a
Yeah.
great way to be able to do business reviews at scale. Update AI is one that we've started working with. I saw Mickey was your first guest, I think.
He was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Shout out to Mickey Powell. That dude is absolutely amazing. He's
He
awesome. I
is.
love him.
Yeah.
And so, like what he's been doing over there with Josh at Update is really impressive. We use that, and it's just the thing I hate about note taking tools that they got right is it doesn't take a big black square on the screen. I don't
Yeah.
know why I hate that so much, but
Hmm.
they've got it. It's just in the background. You don't even know it's not just Zoom recording. And then the next thing you know, it does these amazing TLDRs and the action items, and it's got the metrics, and it has everything that you want. You don't have to worry about taking notes.
Yep.
It's an incredible. I don't know. Do you use that, Alex? Are you familiar
Yeah,
with that?
I do. And not to turn this into an Update AI commercial, but I think the thing that people don't realize about Update AI is a couple things. First off, Josh and crew have figured out PLG for CS. Like they were in hot and heavy with the CSM. This is a great tool, note taker, gonna save you a bunch of time, blah, 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 blah. Massive adoption that way.
Mhm.
The back end of it is this massive powerhouse of customer data and churn prediction data that
Yeah.
a lot of leaders are sleeping on. And so I think Update AI is a massive sleeping giant in CS right now.
I completely agree. And another one that comes to mind, speaking of like signals like that, there's a company called Sturdy
Yeah.
that they were last, what was it, 23? I think it was in 23. No, it was 2022. They
Yeah.
were attending like the different CS conferences and kind of coming to market in CS. That thing is incredibly powerful because it has all of the signals to surface up. So all of your communications are going to go run through this thing, and it's going to pick out those moments of expansion opportunities to forward to an account manager or CSM that, hey, they mentioned this pain point, and that could be an option to sell them something,
Yeah.
or the churn risk, right? They're
Yeah.
asking for their contract, and why are they asking for a copy of their contract, or whatever the churn risk might be. Surfaces up that signal to whomever, can automate actions through a CSP or a CRM, or it can just alert a human to go next best thing to work on,
Right.
basically.
Yeah.
Really can become a powerful workflow management tool. And so, I mean, that's my point, I guess. There's so much out there right now. This tech stack's only getting bigger and bigger, all designed to more positively affect our relationships with customers, remove friction, provide signals to the humans, remove the mundane services that we or actions that we have to do as CSMs, et
Yeah.
cetera. The one thing, if I can pick a bone with all the CSPs out there, though,
Hmm.
this drives me nuts, and it's driven me nuts for like 10 years now. And so Gainsight to Tango, Client Success, Churn Zero, Catalyst, I'm talking to all of you. How come nobody touches the customer? Why does
Yeah.
nobody have a customer portal? You're a customer success platform, and it's all inward focused. The users are all CSMs and people in our organizations, and we still fall into the same channel of communication with our customers as everybody else. email. And the
Yep.
reason I'm so passionate about this is because before I was in true customer success, I was running that technical account management team at Jive Software, and that was a collaboration tool.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. We didn't ever email our customers. We worked in our product with our customers, and it created this less noisy channel for me to be able to engage with them more
Mhm.
effectively. And I thought for sure by this point, one of the CSPs would
Yeah.
build out that type of functionality. So
If
there's
I-
my bold pick with the tech stack of customer success. Somebody build a portal that changes how we interact with our customers, damn it.
If I've got a CSP installed, I shouldn't have to also install Ever After to have a customer facing portal, right?
Yeah, that's exactly my point.
Well, look, we're sadly creeping up on time, but I've massively enjoyed the convo. As we kind of close stuff out, I would, a couple more kind of standard questions that I love to ask, which is, the first one is, what are you paying attention to? What's in your content diet?
What's in my Oh yeah, like what am I reading, whatnot? It's right now I'm really focused on customer experience and
Mhm.
moving outside. So this year that was kind of my goal. And so from a public speaking perspective, I'm able to get myself into some CX conferences. I'm going to be on a panel with the one and only Peter Armley in 2 weeks up in Toronto. I can't wait to see Peter.
Cool.
And so that's really where I'm kind of focusing in terms of podcast consumption and what books I'm reading, et cetera, and who I'm following, and kind of really trying to get up to speed on that CX side of the CS formula, if you will.
Do you know this guy, Simon
I do
Chris?
I do not. Simon Chris, no, I don't. I
Simon-
haven't met. Yeah, I'll look it up.
He's a massive CX speaker. He wrote this book on the AI empowered customer, which is a really good read.
Let's see if I can find. If we're pulling out books, here we go. Here's one of them. This is, I don't know if you're familiar with Sean
Yeah.
Albertson,
Mhm.
but Sean was the moderator up in Vancouver for the first CX conference I went to, or I was actually on a fireside chat with him up there back in March.
Cool.
And so working my way through that one. And then let's see, this one is a little different. This guy was actually, Steven was actually up at that
Ah.
conference as well. And as a chief revenue officer, when we talk rev operations and it's basically digital revenue that we're
Yeah.
looking at, right? It's
Right.
right in line with what you're talking about for CS, but now we're looking at it from the revenue acquisition standpoint. That's obviously very interesting for me, as well as a CRO who sells into customer success.
For sure.
Always trying to make that bridge, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Do you want to give any shout outs to anyone that you haven't already shouted out?
Oh, let's see. Well, I didn't technically shout out Percy Rose, but I want to
Okay.
make sure I call out what he's doing over there at HPE, because he's awesome.
Mhm.
I think, said enough about Mickey that people probably know I have a man crush on him, and that's good. Those are probably the two that come to mind. I could go down the list,
Sure.
forever.
Yeah.
But in terms of like trying to keep it digital focused, because
Yeah.
I know I want to stay on point for your listeners and yourself, Alex. I mean, congratulations on all of the success with the podcast.
Thank you.
It's really impressive, and I'm just happy to be able to be a part of it. And thanks for the chance to hang out with you today.
Yeah, it was awesome having you. Where can people find you, engage with you, and find out what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn, you can probably find me, Aaron Thompson, Aaron. Redslacks.com has a social page, and you can link out to my YouTube channel, my LinkedIn, and my Twitter. And then you can find all the training and education that you would need for customer success. We just came out with a customer support certification this year. So we have a certified customer support specialist. So instead of a certified CSM, it's a CCSS.
Cool.
So any support leaders out there that would like to train their teams, find us at successcoaching.co, not quite .com. We still haven't been able to wrestle that domain away. But yeah, successcoaching.co, or just come and find me and I'll point you in the right direction.
That sounds good. Well, I appreciate your energy, your opinions, your thoughts, and it's been an awesome conversation. Thanks so much for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Digital CX Podcast. If you like what we're doing, consider leaving us a review on your podcast platform of choice. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment down below. It really helps us to grow and provide value to a broader audience. You can view the digital customer success definition word map and get more information about the show and some of the other things that we're doing at digitalcustomersuccess.com. This episode was edited by Lifetime Value Media, a media production company founded by our good mutual friend Dylan Young. Lifetime Value aims to serve the content, video, audio production needs of the CS and post-sale community. They're offering services at a steep discount for a limited time, so navigate to lifetimevaluemedia.com, go have a chat with Dylan, and make sure you mention the Digital CX Podcast sent you. I'm Alex Turkovich. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.